Chapter 238. ZMO led her monster beast army to the spot where Jin Hao had died, but after searching through the pile of dust for a long time, she still couldn't find her soul-controlling insect. Her expression couldn't help sinking as her pretty face became cold. Each of the Tianlang dynasty cultivators' soul-controlling insects was extremely precious. It wasn't that the insects themselves were valuable, but rather that they had their own spiritual energy threads attached to them. These things were not to be taken lightly. Once they fell into the hands of an enemy and were burned, their spiritual energy would be damaged. If one were to encounter such a blow in a fierce battle, it was possible to be defeated and even lose one's life. Therefore, every time a controlled monster beast died, ZMO would rush to the spot where the monster beast died and retrieve her soul-controlling insect. But this time, she couldn't find it. Perceiving the change in ZMO's expression, Leng Shan, who was following behind her, couldn't help sneering, her face filled with satisfaction. ZMO snorted and closed her eyes, carefully sensing her surroundings. Although she hadn't cultivated her divine sense and couldn't search on a large scale, the scattered spiritual energy threads were of the same origin as her own, so she could perceive them from a short distance away. After a brief investigation, a strange look appeared on ZMO's pretty face, and she quickly turned to look in a certain direction, her beautiful eyes blooming with a strange light. Dozens of monster beasts quickly spread out and surrounded the area. Leng Shan was stunned. From ZMO's actions and demeanor, she noticed a trace of unease. She hated ZMO to the bone, hated her for promising her virginity to Jin Hao, and hated her even more for acting so wantonly. She had thought that ZMO was destined to suffer a big loss this time, so she had secretly watched the show with a gloating heart, but she hadn't expected the situation to develop like this. Could it be that the master who killed Jin Hao was still here? Wasn't this the same as throwing himself into a trap? Walala. The sound of rustling leaves came from the jungle, and Leng Shan's eyes caught sight of a running figure. ZMO pointed her finger, and the dozens of monster beasts rushed in the direction of the figure. Giggling sounds could be heard as she laughed and shouted, "Don't run, you can't escape from my soul-controlling insect. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, you have to come back and find me. Obey me obediently and I won't make you suffer." Yes, I knew there was something wrong with that bug. From within the forest came a voice filled with exasperation. Hearing this voice, ZMO couldn't help but laugh out loud. Leng Shan sighed inwardly as the little bit of hope that had welled up in her heart was instantly shattered. It turned out that the one who killed Jin Hao, he was also hit by the soul-controlling insect. Was this person an idiot or a pig? As expected, the man in the forest stopped running. Soon, he was surrounded by dozens of monster beasts and was captured. Then he casually walked back towards them. When she saw this person's face, Leng Shan couldn't help but tremble, and a look of disbelief flashed in her eyes. Jin Hao recognized Yang Kai. How could Leng Shan not recognize him? However, it was precisely because she recognized him that Leng Shan felt even more incredulous. Staring deeply at Yang Kai, her mind was racing as she weighed the pros and cons of this situation. Yang Kai's face was filled with an unwilling expression as he helplessly walked back and stood about 300 feet away from ZMO. Smiling bitterly, he asked, "Miss, what kind of bug was that?" "It's my Tianlang dynasty's unique soul-controlling insect. Since you've been infected, you are now my subordinate," ZMO patiently explained, looking over Yang Kai from head to toe. Seeing that he was just a teenager, her beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. How could she have imagined that the person who killed Jin Hao would be so young? I shouldn't have touched Jin Hao's body. Yang Kai sighed deeply. Filled with grief, he immediately grinned. "Miss, now that I am your subordinate, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to warm your bed at night?" ZMO pursed her lips and smiled. Flirtatiously, she replied, "Sure, but I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it." The other party was so unrestrained. Yang Kai couldn't help but roll his eyes. ZMO took in his expression and giggled. "If I tell you something useful, can you let me go?" Leng Shan suddenly asked, her pair of beautiful eyes staring straight at Yang Kai. "What kind of information?" ZMO frowned. "It's about him. Lung Shan expressionlessly pointed to Yang Kai. Yang Kai smiled lightly, but his heart clenched as he secretly circulated his Yuan Qi. Although he didn't know what this female Ghost King Valley disciple was going to say, he was certain that it wasn't going to be good for him. Surrounded by dozens of monster beasts, if all of them rushed over, he would have to use his yang inflammation wings to escape. Promise me first. Lung Shan tried to bargain. I can't let you go. ZMO slowly shook her head. Lung Shan's expression didn't change as she waited for him to continue. I can treat you better, at most I won't bully you in the future. Remember what you said, otherwise, even if I die together with you, I won't suffer that kind of humiliation again. Having achieved her goal, Lung Shan pointed to Yang Kai and said, the secret art this person cultivates is of the Yang attribute. Lung Shan had fought with Yang Kai before, so naturally she knew the attribute of his Yuan Qi. This attribute was the nemesis of the soul-controlling insect. So when Lung Shan recognized Yang Kai, she knew that he wasn't under the control of the soul-controlling insect. He pretended to be under control in order to beat her at her own game. Lung Shan felt that with Yang Kai's strength, he wouldn't be able to kill ZMO. With dozens of monster beasts here, once Yang Kai attacked, he would die without a doubt. It was better to tell the truth before he died and take advantage of this opportunity to gain some benefits for herself. So after hesitating for a moment, she decided to tell ZMO the truth. She didn't care who died, she only cared about herself. ZMO's smile instantly stiffened on her face as she turned her head and stared coldly at Yang Kai, her eyes filled with murderous intent. The moment she turned her head, Yang Kai decisively forced the soul-controlling insect out of his body, pinched it in his hand and grinned. I know this insect has a strand of your soul attached to it. If you don't want your soul to be damaged, be obedient, or else I'll burn it immediately. ZMO's expression changed greatly, her beautiful face going pale. Yang Kai sneered again and again, remaining calm and collected. Lung Shan remained expressionless, remaining indifferent. After a moment, ZMO suddenly covered her mouth and laughed. You should have burned it while I wasn't paying attention. That way, I would have been injured and perhaps you would have had a chance to survive. But if you want to use this to threaten me, you're making a big mistake. I'd like to hear the details. Yang Kai raised his brow, but his expression didn't change. ZMO coldly said, since you know that a thread of my soul is attached to this insect, do you know that I can take it back? As she spoke, ZMO's thoughts moved and the thread of soul that was attached to the insect was taken back into her mind. Not only was Yang Kai not surprised, but he also began to laugh, his laughter growing louder and louder, rolling like thunder. Such wild and unbridled laughter made ZMO feel very uncomfortable. This young man was so calm, either he still had some tricks up his sleeve, or he had already gone insane. However, looking at his smug expression, he clearly had a clear mind. Where were the signs of insanity? If it had been someone else, ZMO would have been interested in accepting him as a subordinate, but since he was a cultivator who cultivated the yang attribute Yuan Qi, she absolutely couldn't allow him to live. ZMO's pretty face was filled with murderous intent as she raised her jade white hand and was about to order the monster beast to attack when Yang Kai suddenly stopped laughing and coldly stared at ZMO, shouting, "Do you think you can kill me?" Ugh. ZMO suddenly screamed, clutching her head with both hands as her tender body trembled. This sudden change stunned Lung Shan. She stared in shock at the screaming ZMO, then looked up at the always calm and collected Yang Kai. For a moment she couldn't believe what she was seeing. What was going on? What exactly happened to these two people? Lung Shan didn't even see any signs of the two fighting, they were just talking and laughing, yet ZMO had suddenly met with such misfortune. Roar! ZMO's emotional change aroused the reaction of the several dozen monster beasts, each of them baring their fangs at Yang Kai, roaring as they approached him. Make these monster beasts scram. Otherwise I'll destroy your divine sense right now and turn you into an idiot. Yang Kai coldly threatened. ZMO endured the piercing pain in her mind and didn't dare to hesitate, quickly issuing the order. The several dozen monster beasts stared at ZMO for a moment before suppressing their hostility and retreating, only stopping after 1,000 meters or so, tightly surrounding the three of them. You're quite sensible. Yang Kai sneered as he stepped forward, reaching out and grabbing Zimo's hair, lifting her up. Such a violent and cruel attitude caused Lung Shan's heart to skip a beat, and she couldn't help but take a few steps back. You'd better not move, I'll deal with you later. Yang Kai coldly glanced at her, causing Lung Shan to immediately stop and stare at Yang Kai in shock and horror. Half a year ago, when her brother and sister had besieged this high heaven pavilion disciple, he had only been a separation and reunion boundary third-stage cultivator. Under the siege of the three of them, he had been forced to flee like a stray dog. But this time, when they met again, he had effortlessly captured Tian Lang Dynasty's Zmo. Lung Shan was well aware of Zmo's strength and arrogance. With her soul-controlling insect, she could control many monster beast and cultivator, and her own strength was also extraordinary. How could such a person be defeated by Yang Kai in less than half a cup of tea's time? Just now, in order to compete for a little bit of benefit, she had sold him out. Thinking about it now, Lung Shan couldn't help feeling a bit of fear. The situation had changed too quickly. Zimo's screams gradually stopped, her body dripping with sweat, soaking her clothes, revealing her exquisite body in front of Yang Kai. She raised her head slightly, her face filled with stubbornness and unwillingness, staring hatefully at Yang Kai, her beautiful face filled with bitter resentment. It looks like you still don't understand who's in charge. Yang Kai reached out and threw her to the ground. Zimo's pitiful cries rang out once more, but this time it was even more pitiful than before. While screaming, Zmo kept rolling on the ground, as if she was being subjected to the most severe torture in the world. As her cries reached Lung Shan's ears, she couldn't help but shiver. No, don't torture me anymore. Zmo struggled to get up and came to Yang Kai's feet, reaching out and hugging one of his ankles, refusing to let go. Her disheveled hair was soaked with sweat as she looked up at him and pleaded in a trembling voice, I'll listen to whatever you say, don't torture me anymore. Chapter 239. Yang Kai squatted down and looked at her calmly. Are you really obedient now? Zmo nodded quickly. The torment she felt from her soul was worse than death, but she couldn't resist. No one in this world could withstand such pain. It wasn't that she didn't have enough backbone, but rather that Yang Kai's heart was simply too ruthless. You won't disobey me in the future? Yang Kai stretched out his hand and lifted her chin, his eyes sweeping over her cheeks. Zmo squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying, I won't disobey you. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully as he stretched out his finger, gently opening Zmo's mouth, then reaching inside and teasing her fragrant tongue. Zmo's eyes widened, not daring to show the slightest dissatisfaction, her eyes filled with gentleness and cleverness, her tongue like a snake wrapped around Yang Kai's finger, constantly sucking. Her technique was very good, otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to tease Lung Shan so much that she couldn't control herself. Her tongue curled around her fingers, sometimes tightening and sometimes loosening. Not long after, her eyes surged with lust, and the suppressed gasps and moans that caused one's imagination to run wild sounded at the right time. Lung Shan hurriedly turned her head and whispered, shameless. Yang Kai looked up at her and sneered, withdrawing his finger from Zmo's mouth, wiping it dry on her clothes, and pinching her cheek. Zmo let out a pitiful cry, her watery eyes staring at Yang Kai with grievance. Although I know you're acting, your expression is really good. Yang Kai smacked his lips. Zmo smiled. Us Tian Lang dynasty women worship the strong the most. You're so strong, I can't wait to fall for you. How could you be acting? I'm only a separation and reunion boundary 7-stage cultivator. How can I be considered strong? Yang Kai chuckled. The smile on Zmo's face suddenly converged, but she immediately smiled again. Realm doesn't mean anything, and you're still so young. Give you enough time, you'll be stronger than anyone else. Good flattery. I like it. Yang Kai laughed. He straightened up and said, get up. Zmo obediently got up and quietly tidied up her clothes. In front of Lung Shan and Jin Hao, she was the master, but in front of Yang Kai, she was reduced to an obedient servant, not daring to show the slightest disrespect. Zmo didn't want to experience the same torment she had just suffered. Yang Kai looked at Lung Shan coldly and laughed. Lung Shan's expression was very unnatural. There was embarrassment and resentment. But more than that, it was humiliation and unwillingness. Not to mention the conflict between her and Yang Kai, just the fact that she had just betrayed Yang Kai was enough to consign her to eternal damnation. He had just betrayed someone else. Someone else was in control of his life and death. As the saying goes, the river flows east for 30 years and the river flows west for 30 years. But these 30 years were just a blink of an eye. Zmo looked at Yang Kai and then at Lung Shan. He said softly, "Do you want her to die? I can easily kill her." She was a smart woman and naturally saw the murderous intent in Yang Kai's eyes. Lung Shan's expression changed greatly and she hurriedly retreated a few steps, looking at Yang Kai and Zmo with great vigilance, her face filled with determination. It was easy to imagine that if Yang Kai really wanted her dead, Lung Shan would definitely fight back. After a moment of silence, Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Lung Shan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, staring at Yang Kai and asking, "Why? Why what?" Yang Kai asked impatiently, "Why did you let me go?" Lung Shan asked the doubts in her heart. "Our elders have an irreconcilable enmity, and we also have grievances between us. I don't believe you would be so kind as to spare my life. You can easily take my life now. In fact, I'm a good person, is that reason enough?" Yang Kai smiled lightly. Zmo on the side curled her lips. Lung Shan also smiled contemptuously. "If you really are a good person, then why didn't you kill her? You should have let her get those insects out of my body. Although you won't kill me now, you can still control my life and death. How can you call yourself a good person? Do you have the qualifications to question me?" Yang Kai sneered. "Your Ghost King Valley is an evil sect, but that doesn't mean you're a good person, right?" Lung Shan retorted, "I never said I was a good person." What a sharp tongue. Yang Kai dryly coughed. Looking at Zmo, he said, "Get those insects out of her body and let her know what a good person is." Zmo's body trembled. She stared at Yang Kai in disbelief, never having expected this young man to make such a decision. Was he a fool? Without those soul-controlling insects, how could he control this woman? Even Lung Shan was stunned when she heard this sentence, but immediately her eyes lit up with joy. "My orders will not be repeated a second time." Yang Kai stared at Zmo coldly. The latter smiled bitterly and walked over to Lung Shan, her heart filled with a sense of loss. There really was a difference between her and Lung Shan. Although she had grievances with this young man, after all, they were both cultivators of the great Han dynasty. At this time, they really should help each other. "You're quite lucky," Zmo whispered, a trace of envy in her voice as she stretched out her hand and placed it on Lung Shan's abdomen, circulating her yuan qi. A moment later, Lung Shan's face paled and she retched, vomiting out a worm from her mouth. Zmo quickly put the worm away, but Lung Shan couldn't stand it anymore and rushed to the side to vomit. After a long time, she wiped her mouth dry and slowly walked back, her expression complex as she stared at Yang Kai. She was surprised and pleasantly surprised that she had regained her freedom just like that. "Did you kill Jin Hao?" After a moment of silence, Lung Shan asked. "Yes." Yang Kai nodded. "You want revenge? I can give you a chance." "I won't avenge him." Lung Shan slowly shook her head, her eyes suddenly becoming cold as she stretched out her hand towards Yang Kai, sneering, "But I don't believe you'll really let me go." With a burst of cries, a human face appeared in her palm and directly rushed into Yang Kai's body. This was the Ghost King Valley's secret technique, the Ghost King Seal. Zmo's expression changed greatly and she was about to act, but Yang Kai stopped her. "Do." Lung Shan hurriedly retreated, staring at Yang Kai in shock. After being hit by the Ghost King Seal, it was impossible for a person to actively control their body. The resentful spirit was more than enough to destroy a person's consciousness and then occupy their body. Lung Shan was very clear that in this isolated world, there were dangers everywhere. Even if she regained her freedom, there was no hope for survival. There wasn't much hope for them to survive. If they encountered other Tianlang dynasty martial artists, they would be killed and enslaved. So it was better to directly destroy Yang Kai's consciousness and take control of his body. Controlling Yang Kai was tantamount to controlling ZMO. This way Lung Shan would have enough capital. However, the Ghost King seal didn't have any effect. How could she not be shocked? Sure enough, you're not a good person. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. He had long seen through Lung Shan's unwillingness and ambition. All his previous actions were just to deliberately lure her into using the Ghost King seal. Where's my Ghost King seal? Lung Shan asked. You want it? I'll give it back to you. Yang Kai coldly snorted, and the face flew out of Yang Kai's body and returned to Lung Shan's body. Lung Shan didn't dare to stay any longer. Turning around, she ran away. ZMO quietly watched from the side, but she couldn't help but ask. You're letting her go just like that? She wanted to attack you just now. Those who attack me must pay the price. Yang Kai grinned. As soon as his voice fell, Lung Shan suddenly fell to the ground and let out a miserable cry. Hearing this familiar voice, ZMO couldn't help trembling. Just now, she had also been tortured like this, in so much pain that she wished she could die immediately, but she couldn't get her wish. Now she was just a spectator. How did he do it? ZMO couldn't figure it out. Lung Shan's torture was even more miserable than ZMO's. After a stick of incense worth of time, the howling stopped, but Lung Shan had completely fainted. Yang Kai coldly snorted, "Bring her back." ZMO obediently stepped forward and carried the unconscious Lung Shan back. Looking at the soaking wet Lung Shan, ZMO couldn't help feeling a sense of sympathy. I need to recover, don't disturb me. Yang Kai walked to the side. Sitting down cross-legged, he began to restore his strength. Half a day later, Lung Shan slowly woke up, but as soon as she woke up, she screamed again. She fainted again. ZMO was frightened and became even more cautious when interacting with Yang Kai. She found that this young man was cruel and merciless, without the slightest pity for the fairer sex. Lung Shan and she were both first-class beauties, but when he tortured them, he didn't have the slightest scruple or pity. Such a person was too terrible. A complete cold-blooded pervert. A day later, Lung Shan woke up again, but this time Yang Kai didn't torture her. Her strength was only at the Yuan Qi boundary and she hadn't cultivated her divine sense yet, so if he continued to torture her, she was afraid she really might become an idiot. Looking at Yang Kai sitting cross-legged on the ground in the distance, Lung Shan's face was filled with fear. ZMO persuaded her for a long time before she finally trembled and stepped in front of Yang Kai, her lips pursed, her face pale, not daring to breathe. Although she had been controlled by ZMO before, it was just a bug in her body. But now, her soul was being controlled and this High Heaven Pavilion disciple was playing with her like a toy. She had just escaped from the wolf's den, only to fall into the tiger's den. Lung Shan couldn't help feeling sad. Sigh. Yang Kai had long noticed the two women coming over, but he still closed his eyes and meditated, pretending not to notice, just to see if they had any other thoughts. The results of the test were good, whether it was ZMO or Lung Shan, they were now very obedient, not daring to show the slightest disrespect. Opening his eyes and looking at Lung Shan, the latter couldn't help but want to retreat, but was caught by ZM, still not apologizing. ZMO didn't know what kind of mood she was in right now, so she gently pushed Lung Shan away. Lung Shan's eyes flashed with a trace of humiliation, biting her lip until it bled as she timidly looked up at Yang Kai, then hurriedly avoided his gaze. If you keep acting like this, I won't care about you anymore. ZMO couldn't help feeling resentful. She was just a woman, what was the point of having such a worthless backbone? Other men said that a real man should know when to yield and when not to yield. Lung Shan's face was filled with unwillingness, but she didn't say a word. Yang Kai's mouth curved into a smile as he stared at her closely. I was wrong. After a long time, Lung Shan finally opened her mouth, her voice as soft as a mosquito's, almost inaudible, her two hands wringing each other nervously. Yang Kai just looked at her indifferently, not saying anything. Lung Shan gritted her teeth, tormented. ZMO chuckled and said, She knows she was wrong, so she won't dare to do anything to you in the future. Alright, don't cry. Saying so, Zmo helped Lung Shan wipe the corners of her eyes. Chapter 240. It's none of your business. Lung Shan pushed Zmo's hand away in disgust. Only this once. Yang Kai said indifferently. Hearing this sentence, Lung Shan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that she would no longer have to suffer that unbearable torture. How did you do it? Lung Shan hesitated for a long time before finally daring to ask the question in her heart. Before, she had only used her Ghost King seal on Yang Kai, and after it returned to her body, something else had appeared in her mind. Lung Shan had not cultivated her divine sense, so she didn't know what it was, but she knew that the man in front of her had relied on it to control her life and death. I'm also very curious about this. If it's convenient, can you tell me? Zmo smiled charmingly, her eyes looking towards Yang Kai, her red lips slightly pursed, showing a somewhat unconvinced look. Her red eyes were extremely attractive. It's very simple, I just planted a brand in your divine sense. Yang Kai replied with a playful look. The two women listened to him and their faces were filled with shock. Very simple? Although they had not cultivated their divine sense, they knew how difficult it was to plant a brand in someone's mind. Not to mention that Yang Kai was just a separation and reunion boundary cultivator. Even if he was an immortal ascension boundary cultivator, it would still take a lot of effort to do this. Not to mention, he also had to worry about damaging someone's soul and turning them into an idiot. But from his mouth, it was just 3 simple words. Thinking about what had happened to the two of them, it could indeed be described as very simple. Needless to say, Lung Shan had used her Ghost King seal and then taken it back. In less than 3 breaths of time, her life and death were no longer in her hands. Zmo had only taken back a strand of her divine sense attached to her soul-controlling insect, yet she had suffered the same fate. Now that she thought about it, this young man in front of her had not left after killing Jinhao. She was afraid he had already prepared for this and was only waiting for Zmo to take the bait. It was ridiculous that Zmo had actually run over. Falling into someone else's trap, she had completely lost her advantage and become his slave. Thinking of this, Zmo's heart went cold and she secretly regretted her actions. Earlier, when he said he would burn her soul-controlling insect, it was definitely to force her to take back her divine sense. It was a thread of divine soul that had been tampered with in advance. Staring at Yang Kai, Zmo took a deep breath and asked, "Are you really just a separation and reunion boundary 7-stage cultivator?" Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Zmo patted her trembling full chest and laughed self-deprecatingly. "Like I said, you're right. How could a separation and reunion boundary 7-stage cultivator accomplish such a feat? Then how strong are you?" Yang Kai chuckled. His body shook, and an invisible aura spread out. The yuan qi in his body surged for a while, but it soon calmed down. Breakthrough. Zmo and Lung Shan stared blankly at Yang Kai. It was obvious that he had only obtained it after breaking through a small realm. But this wave was not strong. It was not even at the level of yuan qi. I'm now a separation and reunion boundary 8th stage cultivator. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows at the two women. Zmo and Lung Shan both groaned in their hearts. So, he really was just a separation and reunion boundary cultivator. What he had said before was not a lie. Glancing at each other, both Zmo and Lung Shan blushed. Of the two of them, one was a yuan qi 6th stage cultivator, the other was a yuan qi 4th stage cultivator. They were both geniuses of their respective sects. In their confrontation with Yang Kai, being captured in an instant, and even having their life and death controlled, they naturally felt quite ashamed. Smiling bitterly, the two women did not know what to say. "You can do whatever you want. Although I control your life and death, as long as you are obedient, I won't try anything funny. I won't make things too difficult for you. So, if you want to hunt someone or monster beast, feel free to do so. When I need you, I will call for you." Yang Kai closed his eyes again. Lung Shan and Zmo slowly retreated several dozen meters before stopping. They did not want to get too close to Yang Kai and cause him to misunderstand. This man is really strange. Zmo muttered to herself as she stared at Yang Kai in the distance. Lung Shan snorted. Thinking of how she had just surrendered, she couldn't help but feel ashamed. Grinding her teeth, she snorted, "Sooner or later, I will make him pay the price." Zmo glanced at her and chuckled, "If you have the ability to escape from his control, then we'll see." "And you?" Lung Shan's pair of beautiful eyes filled with murderous intent as she glared at Zmo. "I haven't forgotten the shame of being by your side a few days ago." Zmo smiled. "Why are you so angry? I didn't do anything to you. Besides, didn't you enjoy it? Your reaction can't fool me." "Slut." Lung Shan was furious, her face turning red. "If you dare mention those things again, I won't let you go." Zmo smiled contemptuously. "Our life and death is not up to us to decide, so you'd better not be so hostile to me. The most important thing is to find a way to survive in his hands. You saw his attitude towards us, he doesn't show the slightest bit of mercy. If we really make things difficult for him, he will definitely kill us." "Ta." Lung Shan sneered, taking pleasure in her misfortune. "Even you have such a day. How does it feel to be controlled? We're all women, why be so calculative? We should be in the same boat now." Zmo frowned. Lung Shan took a deep breath. Although her heart was still filled with resentment, she had to admit that Zmo was right, hesitating for a moment before asking, "What do you want to do?" "Seduce him." Zmo's face filled with excitement. "He looks like a 16 or 17-year-old boy, a few years younger than us. No matter how ruthless he is still a man. You and I aren't bad looking, so if you want to seduce this little brat, wouldn't it be easy? I think you just want to go to bed with him." Lung Shan mercilessly attacked. "Why are you being so blunt?" Zmo couldn't help but roll her eyes, suddenly chuckling. "But there is one thing I didn't lie to him about. Us Tianlang dynasty women naturally worship the strong. His cultivation isn't high, but he can actually control me. This is something even my brother can't do. You go on your own, I won't humiliate myself." Lung Shan snorted, turning around and walking away, sitting down cross-legged. After being tortured by Yang Kai twice, she had fainted. She urgently needed to recover. Zmo sneered, thinking to herself, "Just wait until I conquer him, then you'll know I'm right." This world had always been like this. Men conquer the world, women conquer men. This was an ancient truth. Yang Kai sat cross-legged, not immediately dealing with his own matters, instead focusing on sensing the reactions of Zmo and Lung Shan's souls. Although he couldn't hear what they were saying, their strange reactions clearly told Yang Kai their intentions. And not bad, both of them are very obedient. At least they didn't have any thoughts of killing me. Being able to control them so smoothly. This was really a pleasant surprise for Yang Kai. All of this was thanks to the old demon. In Yang Kai's original plan, he had only wanted to burn the two soul-controlling insects to injure Zmo. Then he would wait for an opportunity to kill her. However, the old demon had come up with a better method. By mixing a strand of Yang Kai's soul into Zmo's soul in a special way, once she took it back, it was tantamount to establishing a brand in her mind, allowing him to completely control her. After a final test, it really was convenient, fast, and effective. With this successful precedent, Yang Kai immediately set his sights on Lung Shan. The Ghost King seal was a martial skill that Ghost King Valley's disciples used to cultivate, so it was definitely a useful tool. The old demon lived up to his expectations and immediately used some kind of trick on the Ghost King seal. Moreover, the old demon's trick was very high-end, so there was no need to worry about it being neutralized. The soul was a very fragile thing, and now that both Zmo and Lung Shan's souls were implanted with Yang Kai's brand, even if a master wanted to help them neutralize it, they would have to worry about damaging their consciousness. What a pity! One less resentful soul. The old demon was a little annoyed at this moment. "I think it's a pity." Yang Kai was even more dissatisfied. "If I had known earlier that I could do this, why would I have killed Jin Hao and the other Ghost King Valley disciple? Wouldn't it have been better to subdue them as thugs?" The old demon smiled wryly. You knew all along but didn't say anything, right? Yang Kai was slightly annoyed. The old demon complained, such a weak enemy, it's useless to subdue them. If young master hadn't reminded me, this old servant really wouldn't have thought of this. Forget it. Taking in a man as a subordinate is a bit strange. Yang Kai didn't care too much. After secretly observing Zmo and Lung Shan for a moment, Yang Kai immersed himself in his own affairs. Taking a deep breath, Yang Kai called out in his mind, summoning the Yuxia golden shadow leopard he had controlled. Reaching out and touching its head, he crushed the beast slave seal in its body. As soon as the fifth-order monster beast was freed from its shackles and regained its freedom, it immediately fled. Yang Kai didn't kill it, nor did he chase after it. Instead, under Zmo's orders, several dozen monster beasts were dispatched, forcing it back and reimplanting its soul-controlling insect. Yang Kai didn't care about her, using his left hand to form the white tiger seal and his right hand to form the divine ox seal, clasping his palms together and pushing them forward. With a roar, the heaven-shaking white tiger and earth-splitting divine ox appeared at the same time. Attracted by this roar, Zmo and Lung Shan quickly turned their heads, and after seeing the two lifelike beast phantoms, they couldn't help gaping. They had never seen such a magical martial skill before. To be able to activate one's own Yuan Qi, the two red monster beast bodies were clearly not flesh and blood, but rather made up of Yang Kai's Yuan Qi. Just how rich and pure does this Yuan Qi have to be able to achieve such a feat? Isn't he just a separation and reunion boundary cultivator? Seeing this, Yang Kai sighed, stretched out his hand, and snapped his fingers, causing the two beast phantoms to collapse at the same time. After using it for such a long time, Yang Kai also discovered some of the mysteries of the beast soul skill. No matter when only one white tiger and one divine ox could be summoned, it was impossible to summon a second one. The beast soul skill was divided into two beast phantoms and combined to form the beast slave seal, but whether it was divided or combined, before the first beast soul or the beast slave seal was destroyed, it could never be used a second time. This may be related to the two powerful monster beasts' remnants in his body. If Yang Kai wanted to practice the beast slave seal, he could only destroy the two beast phantoms. Constantly using the white tiger seal and the divine ox seal, Yang Kai tried to combine them into one, trying to discover the mysteries of the beast slave seal. Chapter 241. Zmo and Lung Shan were both dumbfounded. They could only see two red monster beasts emerge from Yang Kai's side and then shatter into pieces. From time to time, they could only see a ray of light shooting out, so they had no idea what he was doing. However, the two of them were still considered elites of their respective sects, so naturally they could see that Yang Kai was practicing some kind of mysterious martial skill they had never heard of before. It was just that, to practice so recklessly, how much primordial qi would he need to squander? How many of these martial skills do you think he can display with his Yuan Qi? Zmo couldn't help but ask Lung Shan softly. At most 5 moves, his Yuan Qi will be exhausted. Lung Shan estimated. Zmo didn't refute this time and instead nodded slightly, apparently agreeing with Lung Shan's point of view. The two women could feel the huge consumption of Yuan Qi from the Yuan Qi fluctuations, so it was obvious that this martial skill was definitely not low grade. The higher the grade of the martial skill, the more powerful it was, but the more Yuan Qi it consumed. Even if the two of them were to display this martial skill, they could only display it 10 times. Yang Kai's cultivation wasn't high, so naturally he couldn't support it for a long time. What, do you have an idea? Lung Shan turned to look at Zmo meaningfully. Zmo was taken aback and patted her chest. Don't talk nonsense. Even if he has exhausted all of his vitality, he only needs a single thought to kill us. It's best for us to be honest. Being controlled by one's soul is no joke. Look, it's the 5th time. As they spoke, Yang Kai once again used his beast spirit skill, but this time he still didn't succeed. The white tiger seal and divine ox seal both activated, and the two beast spirits appeared. Yang Kai didn't rush and simply scattered them. Carefully feeling the mystery of this martial skill, he recalled the unique feeling he had when he had successfully fused it. ZMO smiled sweetly and reached into her sleeve, taking out a bottle. What are you doing? ZMO looked at her in surprise. Trying to please him. ZMO shook the bottle. This is our Tianlang dynasty's Yuan Qi restoration pill. You should have some on you, right? Now is the time when he needs to recover. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Despicable, shameless. Shameless. Using humiliation for glory. Lung Shan reprimanded with a straight face. Don't say that. ZMO covered her mouth and giggled. If worst comes to worst, the next time he needs to recover, I'll give you the opportunity. We'll take turns. Lung Shan snorted. His hostility, however, was greatly restrained. Of course, she couldn't seduce Yang Kai, but she could give him some pills at the right time to win Yang Kai's favor. Now that his life and death were in his hands, he had to protect himself. Naturally, he had to lower his posture. Otherwise, if that cheap servant ZMO took the initiative, his future days would be very difficult. I'm going, ZMO said as she stood up, but before she could take another step, she heard two more roars coming from the other side. Did he use it again? ZMO was shocked, and so was Lung Shan. This time he should be exhausted, right? ZMO muttered to herself, a charming smile appearing on her face as she took a step forward. But at that moment, Yang Kai shattered the two beast spirits. Once again he used his beast spirit skill. Success. The white tiger seal and divine ox seal merged perfectly, turning into a beam of light that shot forward. If there was a monster beast in front of him, it would definitely be hit by the beast slave seal and be controlled. Striking while the iron was hot, Yang Kai kept waving his hands, continuously using his beast spirit skill. In a single breath, he used it 4 times but failed twice. After succeeding twice, Yang Kai vaguely felt that he had found that feeling, but he still wasn't skilled enough. ZMO, who had just taken a step forward, quietly retracted her steps. Along with Lung Shan, both of them stared dumbly at the scene in front of them. Yang Kai's endurance had completely exceeded their expectations and imagination. A whole day passed. Yang Kai was still practicing his beast spirit skill. ZMO and Lung Shan were completely numb, their hearts filled with grief. Just how much Yuan Qi was stored in this person's body? How could he support such an unscrupulous attack? Could it be that this martial skill consumed very little Yuan Qi? Not to mention the two women's shock, Yang Kai was also inadvertently shocked. The Dantian's yang liquid reserves had actually decreased by more than 20 drops. Now that there were no more yang attribute pills to supplement his yang liquid, the Dantian's reserves had to be used sparingly, otherwise, there would be no way to restrain the evil energy inside the unyielding golden skeleton. However, using his beast spirit skill really consumed too much Yuan Qi. Not only did he use his beast spirit skill, but also his Burning Sun's 3-layer blast, Yang Inflammation Wings, Star Mark, all of which required a huge amount of Yuan Qi. If it was any separation and reunion boundary 8th stage cultivator, it would be impossible for them to use these techniques too frequently. I can no longer use my yang liquid to practice my beast spirit skill. After frowning for a long time, Yang Kai's eyes lit up. He had 3 energy warehouses in his body. The star space was exclusive to the Star Mark martial skill, and the Dantian's yang liquid could not be squandered, but the unyielding golden skeleton's energy could. The amount of energy stored in the golden body was almost immeasurable. Normally, he could only extract energy from the golden body when he used the unyielding will. Now, could he think of a way to use the energy in the golden body to perform martial skills? If he could, then his endurance would rise to a new level, and he would no longer have to worry about the amount of yang liquid he had. As soon as this idea came to his mind, Yang Kai became excited, because none of his martial skills required the use of yang attribute Yuan Qi. All of them could be used by any attribute Yuan Qi. Taking a deep breath, Yang Kai forced the remaining true yang Yuan Qi from his meridians into his Dantian, completely emptying all his meridians. Immersing his mind into the golden skeleton, Yang Kai tried to communicate with it, trying to extract energy from it. Gradually, the golden skeleton responded, and a small amount of energy poured out of it, pouring into his meridians. A faint sense of violence and bloodthirst rose in his heart. This was the characteristic of the unyielding golden skeleton's energy, a very evil energy. It was completely different from the pure yang attribute true yang yuan qi, a completely opposite existence. As the golden skeleton's energy poured into him, Yang Kai's whole body gradually became wrapped in a black aura, crazy, cruel, and violent, spreading out in all directions. Zmo and Lung Shan saw this scene from a distance and couldn't help but feel their hearts jump. It's become the demon race. Zmo exclaimed. It's really become the demon race. Lung Shan also stood up and stared at Yang Kai. The two women suddenly looked at each other, seeing the joy and excitement in each other's eyes. In their minds, Yang Kai was obviously practicing that mysterious martial skill too frequently, causing his yuan qi to become chaotic, causing his mind to become restless, and then he couldn't control it, leading to the current situation. They didn't care about Yang Kai's life or death, but now that he was in such a situation, the two women saw a glimmer of hope. If the unyielding golden skeleton become the demon race, then his meridians would burn. His cultivation would be ruined. He would become a complete waste, or he would die on the spot, his soul scattered. Regardless of what kind of result Yang Kai would end up in, Zmo and Lung Shan were willing to see it. It would be best if he died. The two women secretly prayed in their hearts. Their pretty faces were filled with joy and expectation. If Yang Kai really become the demon race because of the unyielding golden skeleton, then the brand imprinted in their minds would be broken, and they would be able to regain their freedom. The two women's eyes stared at Yang Kai without blinking. Their breathing gradually became unstable, and their expressions became extremely nervous. As the black qi around Yang Kai's body gradually became thicker, the violent and bloodthirsty aura around him also became more and more intense. If the unyielding golden skeleton become the demon race, then his mind will become muddled, and he won't recognize anyone. What if he accidentally detonates the brand imprinted in our minds? Lung Shan suddenly thought of a very practical problem. Right now, Kai Yang was definitely unconscious and unable to think, so the possibility of her thinking was very low. However, they still had to be on guard. If Yang Kai really did do this, then they would die too unjustly. Zmo's expression changed, her beautiful face turning pale, licking her lips and staring deeply at Lung Shan. What do you want to do? Add fuel to the fire. Lung Shan bit her lip and suggested in a trembling voice. Zmo's brow furrowed slightly, thinking about the gains and losses as well as the possibility of success. After a long time, she nodded slightly. Good, but let's wait a little longer. I don't know if he's still conscious, but if the situation becomes more serious, then we'll go. The last sentence was said resolutely and decisively. It was obvious that he had made up his mind. Lung Shan secretly nodded. Clenching her teeth, she stared in the direction of Yang Kai. Her thoughts were much more complicated than Zmo's. After all, even if she killed Yang Kai and removed the brand imprinted in her mind, Zmo still had dozens of monster beasts to enslave. Lung Shan, on the other hand, was all alone, so naturally she had to plan for a way out. Under the observation of the two women, the signs of Yang Kai's become the demon race were becoming more and more serious. The black qi around him was so thick that it was almost impossible to see his figure. Wrapped in it, only a rough outline could be seen. Even though they were several dozen meters away, the two women could still clearly feel the evil aura seeping out of the black qi. After waiting for the time it would take to burn a stick of incense, Zmo said, it looks like he has completely fallen into the state of become the demon race. There really is no way to escape. Do you want to go? Lung Shan glanced at Zmo. Zmo grit her teeth and nodded slightly. The two women took a deep breath and slowly approached Yang Kai together, their yuan qi secretly condensing as they vigilantly observed Yang Kai's movements. 50 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters. As they approached, the two women's heartbeats couldn't help but accelerate. This was a matter of life and death for them. How could they remain calm? 20 meters, 10 meters. As long as they were within 5 meters, the two women would be able to attack together and instantly take Yang Kai's life. Once they killed him, the brand imprinted in their minds would be removed. As if they could see freedom beckoning to them, whether it was ZMO or Lengshan, their pretty faces couldn't help flushing with nervousness and anticipation. 5 meters. Just as the two women hardened their hearts and were about to recklessly kill him, a pair of scarlet eyes suddenly opened from within the black chi. These eyes seemed to be filled with a mysterious power, piercing through the hearts of ZMO and Lengshan. The two women involuntarily stopped in their tracks, their tender bodies trembling uncontrollably. They could see all kinds of evil in these eyes, but even so, there was still a sense of calmness and ridicule in them. Chapter 242. In the next moment, Yang Kai, who was wrapped in black chi, grinned at them. His smile was extremely evil, and his mouth full of white fangs looked extremely terrifying under the contrast of the black chi. Looking at those eyes and that evil grin, ZMO froze in place, her yuan chi involuntarily calming down, not daring to show the slightest hostility. ZMO's brow furrowed. She really couldn't figure out whether Yang Kai had actually become the demon race or not. I should give you some punishment. Yang Kai coldly snorted, pushing out his hands and summoning his white tiger seal and divine ox seal. Unlike the true Yang Yuan Chi beast spirits, these two beast spirits were pitch black, just like Yang Kai himself, full of evil and mysterious aura. With a roar, the two beast spirits rushed forward, one from the left and one from the right, directly pressing the two women to the ground. We were wrong, we thought you'd become the demon race. ZMO screamed in horror. Although her strength was much higher than the beast spirits, she still didn't dare to resist. She didn't want to suffer the pain of having her soul tortured again. Even if I become the demon race, do you think you'll have an opportunity to take advantage of me? Yang Kai sneered. If he hadn't seen through their thoughts, Yang Kai wouldn't have been so polite to them. What they were doing now was only out of self-preservation. With a thought, the two beast spirits dispersed and the two women hurriedly got up, terrified. Looking at them indifferently, Yang Kai grinned. You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Now tell me, what kind of punishment do you want? ZMO trembled, biting her lip. As long as you don't torture my soul, I'll accept anything. Really? Yang Kai's brow furrowed. ZMO nodded. Torturing one's soul was worse than death. It was the most vicious form of torture in the world. What about you? Yang Kai glanced over at Lengshan. Me too. Lengshan stuttered. Yang Kai coldly stared at the two of them and suddenly chuckled. Then, take off your clothes. Hearing this, the two women trembled. ZMO quickly returned to her senses and immediately smiled, unbuttoning her robes and slowly taking them off. Her watery eyes contained boundless flirtatious feelings. On the other hand, Lengshan's body stiffened. She was completely at a loss. It's fine if you don't want to take it off. You'll have to be tortured 3 times until you pass out. It's your choice, Yang Kai said coldly. Thinking of that pain, Lengshan's entire body turned ice cold. Only then did he close his eyes. He allowed his tears to fall as he said fiercely, if there comes a day when I can regain my freedom, I will do it. I will tear you to pieces. Yang Kai laughed. I'll be waiting. Piece after piece of clothing was taken off, and the two women's graceful figures were soon revealed to Yang Kai. Whether it was ZMO or Lengshan, both were not bad-looking. Their faces were beautiful, and their figures were even more enchanting. Their chests were round, their abdomens were flat, and their buttocks were slender. Yang Kai unscrupulously swept his eyes over the two women's bodies, secretly comparing them, his eyes spitting fire. So, both of them were only left with their undergarments. One was wearing a bright red tube top, while the other was wearing a light purple tube top. The thin undergarments could not hide the boundless spring scenery at all. 2 dark red protrusions protruded under the undergarments like grapes. They were small and exquisite, and could be clearly seen. Their lower bodies. The scenery was even more gorgeous, covering most of the fragrant grass, giving a kind of hazy feeling. It was impossible to see clearly, but it was enough to arouse one's imagination. Except for the most important part. The two women's beauty was imprinted in Yang Kai's eyes. Do you still want to take it off? ZMO lightly pursed her lips and asked softly. Her face blushed. Yang Kai only wanted to teach them a lesson, he didn't want to go too far. He could see that ZMO was a bold and generous woman, while Leng Shan was a bit more conservative. If he went too far, she wouldn't be able to bear it. After feasting his eyes, Yang Kai waved his hand and said, "Get lost." ZMO was stunned on the spot. Leng Shan also opened her eyes and stared at Yang Kai in amazement. The two women had thought that this time they were doomed, but they hadn't expected that this man in front of them would just look at them and let them go. After thinking for a moment, ZMO suddenly grinned and stared deeply at Yang Kai's crotch. Her eyes flashed a look of understanding, and she couldn't help giggling. In the face of such beauty, in this world, besides a true gentleman, there was only one kind of person who would remain indifferent. It turned out that he at this moment, ZMO's heart filled with pleasure. She couldn't help but want to laugh, her shoulders trembling, but she forced herself to hold back. "What are you still standing there for? I'll count to 3, if you don't leave, then don't even think about leaving." Yang Kai didn't notice ZMO's expression and frowned as he threatened. Leng Shan felt like she had been pardoned and hurriedly bowed. "Leave your clothes behind and get lost," Yang Kai said lightly. Leng Shan shot a resentful and aggrieved look towards Yang Kai before quickly covering her private parts and fleeing from the scene. ZMO, on the other hand, didn't seem to be in a hurry. Lazily stretching her waist, she once again threw a flirtatious glance towards Yang Kai before turning around and twisting her waist like a water snake. Her round buttocks swayed back and forth, swaying back and forth as she walked away. Watching the two women disappear behind a large tree, Yang Kai closed his eyes and suppressed the urge in his heart. In fact, he didn't mind having sex with ZMO. In any case, this woman looked very generous, so if he really did take her body, she probably wouldn't care too much. However, after all, the two of them were enemies. Once they reached a point where they couldn't be reconciled, they might end up in a life or death situation. Moreover, last time on Hidden Island, Yang Kai had improved his state of mind a lot, so this time he wanted to suppress it. Between strength and women, Yang Kai preferred the former. While Yang Kai was suppressing and improving his state of mind, behind the large tree, Leng Shan and ZMO were hiding their bodies, silently staring at each other. This time, not only had their sneak attack failed, but they had also been taken advantage of by that little brat. It was really a big loss. Leng Shan was flustered and exasperated, her eyes filled with murderous intent. She reached out and picked up a piece of withered grass on the ground, twisting it with all her strength as she cursed, "Bastard beast, bullying a weak woman, who do you think you are? Sooner or later, I will make him pay back double." ZMO was speechless, and after a long time, she smiled bitterly. "We are in front of him. We can't be considered weak women, right? His strength is lower than ours. Moreover, we were the ones who conspired against him first, he was just giving us a small warning. It's just a few glances, he didn't really do anything to you." Leng Shan stared at ZMO coldly and bitterly said, "You don't care at all?" "Hee hee." ZMO suddenly laughed, her eyes curved like a crescent moon. "If it was another man who saw it, I'm afraid I would care. But him, there's no harm in letting him see more." "It seems you've already given up on yourself," Leng Shan said disdainfully. ZMO didn't care and waved her hand. "I'll tell you a secret, once you know, I promise you won't care too much." "What secret?" Leng Shan asked suspiciously. ZMO leaned forward. She whispered a few words. After hearing this, Leng Shan's face turned red and green, and her eyes revealed a look of schadenfreude and delight. "You mean he can't do anything about it?" Leng Shan asked softly, trying not to laugh. "Why say it out loud? It's fine as long as you know it." ZMO stretched out a finger and blocked Leng Shan's mouth. "How do you know?" Leng Shan asked curiously. For the first time, she felt a sense of familiarity with ZMO, so she couldn't help leaning closer to her. "The two of us were almost naked, but he was still indifferent. Besides impotence, what other explanation could there be?" ZMO covered her mouth and said, "If it was any other man, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to resist our temptation. So, he must have some kind of hidden disease. Lung Shan listened and nodded involuntarily. Her face was full of approval. This is a big taboo for any man. ZMO seemed to understand a lot, so she and Lung Shan leaned their heads together and whispered, "You must never mention it in front of him, otherwise you will definitely be killed." "And I won't mention it." Lung Shan nodded again and again, immediately saying, "But if he has this kind of disease, you said before that we seduce him. Wouldn't that be impossible?" ZMO chuckled. "It's precisely because he's sick that we need to seduce him. We can't do anything to him right now, so if we seduce him and watch him suffer, we won't be able to vent. Isn't that revenge?" Lung Shan suddenly came to a realization, and an eager look appeared on her face. Looking at ZMO with admiration, she said, "You really know a lot." ZMO glanced at her. "Little hussy, our Tianlang dynasty's women aren't as conservative as your great Han dynasties." "Then you with a man," Lung Shan said, her face turning red. ZMO also felt a little embarrassed. "No. I haven't met a man who can conquer me yet." Lung Shan curled her lips. "I don't believe you." After 2 days of continuous meditation, Yang Kai first resisted the temptation in his heart and improved his state of mind a lot, then once again began practicing the beast slave seal. Although he still couldn't fuse the white tiger seal and divine ox seal together every time, he was finally able to get a feel for it and was much more proficient than before. These 2 days, Yang Kai had consumed a huge amount of energy, but the energy stored in his unyielding golden skeleton was bottomless, so this kind of consumption wasn't a burden at all. At this moment, ZMO was sitting in the middle of a group of monster beasts, still wearing only her undergarments. Yang Kai's punishment for them was not over yet. Their strength wasn't low, so naturally they weren't afraid of the cold, but their current appearance was too embarrassing, so ZMO had arranged for the dozens of monster beasts to surround her and Lung Shan, blocking their view of the spring scenery. These 2 days, the two women had mostly discussed how to retaliate against Yang Kai, making him suffer so much that he wished he was dead. As they chatted, they actually shared a common enemy and became closer to each other. Hearing Yang Kai's voice, ZMO was stunned for a moment before letting out a light sigh. It seems he still has some conscience. Saying so, she ordered the 2 monster beasts to run out and bring back her and Lung Shan's clothes. When the 2 neatly dressed and walked to Yang Kai's side, Yang Kai opened his eyes as if nothing had happened. The 2 women were secretly shocked. These days, this young man in front of them had squandered a lot of yuan qi and even showed signs of becoming the demon race, but now he was back to normal without the slightest trace of fatigue. Mysterious man, the 2 women thought to themselves. Chapter 243. I want to ask you something. Yang Kai looked at ZMO and said, "Good." ZMO chuckled and slowly walked over to Yang Kai's side, bringing a fragrant scent with her as she sat down and scrupulously, not showing the slightest annoyance towards Yang Kai's previous punishment. What Yang Kai did not expect was that Lung Shan also came over and sat down on the other side of him, but unlike ZMO, her body was a bit stiff. When Yang Kai looked at her, she actually managed to squeeze out a smile that was uglier than crying. Furrowing his brow, Yang Kai couldn't help wondering what these 2 vicious women were up to, but he didn't notice any hostility from them, so he didn't bother with them. He just assumed that they had realized the situation they were in and didn't dare act presumptuously in front of him anymore. "Master, what do you want to ask?" ZMO snuggled up to Yang Kai, deliberately pushing her chest against his elbow as she breathed out. "Ahem. What did you call me?" Yang Kai's expression became strange. "Master." ZMO smiled sweetly, her towering breasts bouncing up and down as she spoke in a sweet voice. Not only was Yang Kai unable to bear this form of address, even Ling Shan, who was sitting on the other side, couldn't help shivering, a layer of heat appearing on her arms. In her heart, she couldn't help but admire ZMO's shamelessness. "I can't do the same," Ling Shan thought to herself. ZMO smiled like a flower. "I don't know your name, and my life is now in your hands. What's the difference between me and a slave from a rich family? If you point me to the east, I don't dare to the west. If you tell me to lie down, I don't dare to stand." Saying so, she shyly glanced at Yang Kai, her voice gradually lowering. If you tell me to take off my clothes, I will take off my clothes. You are naturally my master. Don't try to act like that with me. Yang Kai frowned. You calling me master is not something you are willing to do. I feel uncomfortable hearing you call me that. As I said before, I control you only to protect myself. As long as you don't try anything funny, I won't embarrass you. ZMO froze for a moment before pursing her lips. I was just joking. What's your name? Yang Kai, what about you? The two women reported their names. Yang Kai already knew about Lung Shan's background, so naturally there was nothing to inquire about. What he was interested in was ZMO. Tell me about your sect. Don't lie to me. When you lie, there are some different fluctuations in your soul. I can feel it. Yang Kai warned. How would I dare? ZMO glared at Yang Kai, hesitating for a moment before continuing. I am from the Tianlang dynasty's Sinluo temple. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yang Kai shook his head slightly. The information he knew was limited to the Great Han Empire, and he didn't know much about the outside world. Lung Shan, on the other hand, couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when she heard this. Sister Lung seems to have heard of it. ZMO chuckled. Lung Shan nodded slightly. Tianlang dynasty's superforce. Naturally, I've heard of it. A superforce, an existence on the same level as the central capital's 8 great families? Yang Kai was stunned, never having imagined that ZMO's sect would be so famous. More or less. ZMO chuckled. Her hand gently wrapped around Yang Kai's arm. Moreover, I'm a princess of the Tianlang dynasty, so you'd better not let me die. If you take me to Tianlang dynasty, maybe you'll be able to become the emperor's son-in-law. From now on, you won't have to worry about wealth, hee. Yang Kai glared at her. Obviously, she wouldn't believe such nonsense. This woman's mind was strange, her thoughts were deep, and she wasn't easy to deal with. On the other hand, Lung Shan's thoughts were easily revealed on her face. Compared to ZMO, she gave Yang Kai much less pressure. Although we brother and sister come from Sinluo Temple, we don't represent the sect. However, it does not represent the entire sect. If you think you can look down on our Tianlang dynasty's superforce because of this, then you are too short-sighted. ZMO continued, the few of us can only be regarded as disciples of a branch of Sinluo Temple. Our main task is to study some insects. The two of you have already experienced it. Your soul-controlling insects. Yang Kai smiled contemptuously. Hearing Yang Kai's disdain, ZMO angrily said, My strength is too low, the insects I raise are naturally not your opponents. If they were good soul-controlling insects, they wouldn't be afraid of heat at all. So those insects are afraid of heat. Yang Kai inadvertently spied this information. ZMO also realized that she had spilled the beans, so she simply said, their nemesis is heat. So any cultivator who cultivates a yang or fire attribute cultivator cannot control them. This also explained why a few days ago, when Lung Shan had told ZMO that Yang Kai cultivated a yang attribute secret art, ZMO had immediately tried to kill him. However, these insects still have some redeeming qualities, at least you Tianlang dynasty people have relied on them to run rampant in this place. Yang Kai thought about Wu Cheng-yi and the other 30 people who had been chased to the ends of the earth, and couldn't help feeling a little sad. Yang Kai had been lucky enough to discover the mystery of these soul-controlling insects. If he had fought ZMO without knowing anything about them, by relying on the dozens of monster beasts, she would have had the absolute upper hand. Naturally, there are many benefits. We can use these insects to control monster beast and grow stronger like a snowball. If we encounter a monster beast or your great Han Dynasty cultivator, we won't even need to lift a finger to kill them. However, the disadvantages are equally obvious. For example, when we meet someone like you, we have to be careful of our insects being burned, which in turn damages our souls. ZMO glared at Yang Kai bitterly, her face filled with depression. That's why those who cultivate yang and fire attribute secret arts are your priority targets. Yang Kai's words revealed the truth. That's natural. Without these two kinds of people, our soul-controlling insects will be able to exert their greatest effect. ZMO proudly said, But in fact, you don't have to worry too much. Our soul-controlling insects are too small. Generally speaking, even if your great Han Dynasty cultivator kills the monster beast we control, they won't be able to discover the existence of these soul-controlling insects. We just need to find the right opportunity to retrieve them. I really don't understand how you were able to discover this secret. Zmo curiously looked at Yang Kai. Yang Kai grinned, "Guess for yourself." Zmo's chest heaved up and down, but she didn't dare to act too presumptuous. In the entire isolated world, besides the few cultivators from the Tianlang dynasty, Yang Kai was probably the only one who was aware of the existence of these soul-controlling insects. Everyone else, no matter who it was, only knew that the Tianlang dynasty cultivators were able to control and enslave monster beasts to do battle. None of them had thought of the existence of these soul-controlling insects. By the way, when I was at the lake that day, there were a total of 4 people from Sanluo Temple. How come you're the only one left? Yang Kai looked at Zmo suspiciously. When this sentence was asked, Zmo's eyes flashed with a trace of humiliation and anger. On the other side, Leng Shan also chuckled. "You can't tell me?" Yang Kai's voice became low, his expression unkind. "It's not that I can't tell you." Zmo took a deep breath. "Leng Shan also knows the situation, let her tell you." Yang Kai couldn't help but be surprised and turned to look at Leng Shan. Leng Shan nodded. "Let's hear it." Leng Shan pondered for a moment, seemingly sorting out her thoughts. A moment later she said, "For the past 6 months, Zmo and the other Tianlang cultivator have been unbridled and surrounded, making me and Jin Hao suffer. Most of the time, we were hiding, but the monster beast's sense of smell is too strong, so we were often found hiding. This continued until a month ago. More than a month ago, we met a group of a cultivator from the Great Han Dynasty. There were about 30 of them. Yang Kai's expression changed. Naturally, he knew who this group of cultivators was. Although our Ghost King Valley has a bad reputation and can be considered an evil sect, in the end, we were all from the Great Han Dynasty, so Jin Hao and I integrated into that group. We thought we had found a backer. Leng Shan couldn't help but smile bitterly, but we didn't expect that in less than 2 days, we would be surrounded by monster beast. Now that she thought about it, if she and Jin Hao hadn't integrated into that group, they probably wouldn't have fallen into enemy hands so quickly. More than 30 people, although they seemed powerful, in fact, they were a big target, far less convenient than her and Jin Hao. And then, Yang Kai asked, after a hard battle, many died, and most of the rest were captured. Captured? Yang Kai was stunned. How could they be captured? Aren't you all Yuan Qi boundary? If you noticed something was wrong, shouldn't you be able to fly away? We couldn't escape. Leng Shan said helplessly. It's not that they're incompetent. Zmo took a deep breath and interjected. Then what's the reason? It's because my brother Qi Shui is too strong. Zmo looked towards Yang Kai. What's his strength? Yuan Qi boundary 7th stage, not because of his strength. Zmo shook her head. That's the demonic beast enslaved by his subordinates? How many monster beasts does he have? Yang Kai frowned. Zmo raised one finger. 100? Zmo shook her head. It can't be 1,000, right? Yang Kai's face paled. Zmo smiled bitterly. What are you thinking? He only has one monster beast. But that monster beast is a 6th-order monster beast. Yang Kai's eyes flashed with shock. Yes, it is a 6th-order monster beast. Although it's not a very strong 6th-order monster beast, it's more than enough to deal with an Yuan Qi cultivator. All the cultivators who tried to escape were killed by my brother Qi Shui and that monster beast. There's a 6th-order monster beast here? Yang Kai's mind raced. Up until now, the most powerful monster beast he had encountered was only a 5th-order one. Zmo's brother Qi Shui could use his soul-controlling insects to control them, but he could use his beast-slave seal to control them. If he could find another 6th-order monster beast, he could also do whatever he wanted. I'm afraid there's only one. Zmo's eyes flashed with envy. Moreover, brother spent a lot of effort to subdue that 6th-order monster beast. He gave up all the monster beasts he controlled and took out his soul-controlling insects, allowing them to swallow and fuse with him. This was a very risky move. The slightest mistake and all the soul-controlling insects would have died, but Brother's luck was very good. After nearly 100 soul-controlling insects fused together, they all evolved, so he was able to control a sixth-order monster beast. Although Zimo's explanation was simple, Yang Kai couldn't help admiring her brother Qi Shui. Taking such a huge risk just to evolve a single soul-controlling insect, it was obvious that this person's personality was decisive and fierce. He was definitely not someone easy to deal with. Chapter 244. Go on. Yang Kai temporarily put aside the idea of subduing a sixth-order monster beast and turned to Leng Shan. Leng Shan nodded. Of the more than 30 people, nearly 10 died. Except for one who managed to escape with his strength, the rest were all implanted with soul-controlling insects and are now under Zimo's control. Of the one who had escaped, Yang Kai didn't need to ask to know who it was. Besides Wu Chengyi, no one else could have done such a thing. Why didn't they kill you? Yang Kai asked suspiciously. The blood beads obtained from killing a cultivator were much better than those obtained from subduing a monster beast, especially since those people were all masters at the Yuan Qi boundary. They wanted to obtain the secrets of their respective sects from us, so they didn't kill us for the time being. Leng Shan smiled bitterly. All of us are the elites of our respective sects, so the martial skills and secret arts we cultivate are naturally the best in our respective sects. The Tianlang dynasty's people were aiming for this. Yang Kai turned to look at Zimo, but Zimo just shrugged and said, "Don't look at me like that, I didn't do anything to those people. The ones I controlled were only Leng Shan and Jin Hao, and I didn't even have time to interrogate them about their martial skills and secret arts before they were subdued by you." Leng Shan continued, "After the Tianlang dynasty's people won, Zimo's brother Qi Shui took his sixth-order monster beast and left alone to pursue Wu Chengyi. Then, for some unknown reason, the three of them had a big quarrel, so Jin Hao and I were assigned to Zimo and left that group." When Leng Shan said this, Zimo gritted her teeth and sneered, her face filled with anger. Yang Kai turned to look at her and sneered. "It looks like you and your two fellow disciples didn't get along very well. Is there no fighting in your sect?" Zimo rolled her eyes at Yang Kai. "This time we came here for life experience. We have a total of 3 tasks. The first is to obtain blood beads to strengthen ourselves, and the second is to extract the cultivation methods of those martial skills and secret arts from the mouths of you great Han Dynasty cultivators. The third was to find the legendary brilliant flame liquid and soul cleansing dew. Every mission is related to our future, so we have to complete it well. After returning to the sect, there will naturally be more benefits. Your two fellow disciples joined forces to bully you. They don't want you to get any benefits, right?" Yang Kai instantly understood the situation. After capturing so many people, only 2 were given to Zimo. Even if Zimo was able to extract information from Leng Shan and Jin Hao, she would only be able to obtain some of Ghost King Valley's secrets. In comparison, Zimo's 2 fellow disciples had much more resources in their hands. This was a competition between members of the same sect, which existed in any sect. They're from the same family. Naturally, I will be excluded. Zimo gnashed her teeth. Her heart was filled with hatred. Yang Kai rolled his eyes. "Do you want me to help you seek justice?" The grudge between the 3 disciples of the Celestial Wolf Kingdom's Dark Azura Hall was definitely a bargaining chip that could be used. Since everyone was in a foreign land, they would meet sooner or later. If Yang Kai wanted to live comfortably, he had to strike first and get rid of the 2 Sanluo Temple cultivator. Not to mention, they also had a big brother who controlled the 6th-order monster beast. This person was the same as Wu Chengyi, the strongest enemy. Before meeting this person, he had to eliminate all unstable factors. Zimo's eyes flashed as she glanced at Yang Kai and frowned. "Although my life is in your hands, I am still a disciple of Tianlang Kingdom, a cultivator of Sanluo Temple. I won't do anything to betray my sect. Even if you kill me, I won't, so don't expect me to help you deal with them." Yang Kai couldn't help but look at her with some surprise, never having expected this woman to be so principled. Not wanting to force her, Yang Kai smiled and said, "I'm just saying, if you don't want to, then forget it." ZMO was stunned. She had refused Yang Kai's offer and was mentally prepared to accept the punishment, but he had actually let it go so easily. "Why are you so easygoing?" ZMO didn't know what Yang Kai was thinking. She was a little suspicious. "What do you think?" Yang Kai snorted. ZMO blinked her big eyes and smiled. "If you're really so easygoing, then remove the seal on my mind." Wishful thinking. Over the next few days, Yang Kai, Ling Shan, and ZMO spent their time together in the isolated world. Now, they basically didn't encounter any enemies, only occasionally encountering one or two monster beasts. If it was a fourth-order one, she would kill it on the spot and take its blood bead. If it was a fifth-order one, ZMO would control it and plant a soul-controlling insect. However, after a few days, they had only encountered a single fifth-order monster beast. Yang Kai didn't want the blood beads and gave them all to ZMO. He didn't lack the energy contained in these blood beads. What he wanted to do now was to constantly temper his meridians and Dantian Yuan Qi so that he could progress towards the Yuan Qi realm. Right now, his main goal was to find the legendary soul-cleansing dew. It was said that ZMO's brother Qi Shui was also looking for it. Whether it was ZMO or Lung Shan, they didn't know much about the soul-cleansing dew, so naturally they didn't know where to look for it. However, what made Yang Kai feel very strange was that these days, whether it was her actions or words, ZMO was constantly teasing him. Compared to when they first met, she was even more wanton and unrestrained. Even Lung Shan, this cold woman, would sometimes do the same. She unintentionally revealed a beautiful and faintly discernible beauty. Occasionally, Yang Kai would see a trace of sympathy and pleasure in their eyes. What the hell? Yang Kai was puzzled. After walking for half a day, the three of them finally found a place to sit down and rest. Of the dozens of monster beasts, only half were with them, the other half had been sent out to investigate the situation. Yang Kai was sitting in meditation to restore his strength when two fragrant wafts came from beside him. Immediately, ZMO and Lung Shan sat down next to him, one on his left and one on his right. They clung to each other tightly, as if it was very cold. Yang Kai frowned as he looked at them. Lung Shan was embarrassed by his stare, her cheeks turning red. ZMO forced a smile and asked, "What's wrong? You two have been acting very strange these past few days. Were you secretly discussing something?" Yang Kai asked with a sullen expression. ZMO cried out in grievance, "How could that be? The two of us are always by your side. Even if we wanted to discuss something, we didn't have the opportunity." Yang Kai also thought about it. They really didn't have the time to conspire, but why did he always feel like something was wrong with them? "Why do you think we're acting strange?" ZMO smiled sweetly, leaning into Yang Kai's arms, half of her body snuggling up against him. Her firm and full chest squeezed against Yang Kai's arm, completely changing shape. Feeling an amazing elasticity, Yang Kai lowered his head and saw ZMO's snow-white chest. ZMO snickered in her heart, but her face remained expressionless as she leaned forward slightly, revealing even more. "It's just a feeling." Yang Kai stared at her without blinking, licking his lips, his expression unscrupulous. Your feelings aren't always accurate." ZMO giggled, her chest rolling up and down. While his throat was burning, Lung Shan also pressed her chest against his. Yang Kai's whole body shook, his abdomen feeling like it was on fire. Two different sensations, one from the left and one from the right, made his soul flutter. Steeling his heart, he pushed ZMO to the ground and directly mounted her. "Ah!" ZMO exclaimed, but she didn't show the slightest fear, her pair of beautiful eyes like a spring tide, a smile on her face as she stared straight at Yang Kai. "This smelly brat can't even do anything, what else does he want?" Lung Shan, who was next to her, was startled, staring dumbfounded. "This is what you asked for. These past few days, I've seen that you don't have any good intentions towards me, right?" Yang Kai's expression was ferocious, his hands covering ZMO's full breasts and rubbing them. "When When did I have any bad intentions towards you? Zmo bit her red lips, her brow furrowed in pain, but in her heart, she couldn't help but feel a kind of pleasure after being ravaged, wishing that Yang Kai's big hands would be a bit stronger. This thought came to her mind, causing her to blush with shame. Do you really think I'm blind? Yang Kai sneered, rudely and overbearingly lifting up Zmo's clothes, exposing her beautiful upper body to his eyes, his big hands rubbing her breasts without the slightest trace of tenderness. Zmo's body stiffened, and she couldn't help but moan. Lung Shan, who was standing to the side, was dumbstruck. Hearing this charming sound, her heart filled with a strange feeling. As Yang Kai continued to rub her breasts, Zmo began to wriggle her body, making a series of incessant squeaking sounds, causing Lung Shan to feel powerless and collapse to the ground, her legs tightly clamped together. Although she was very aroused, Zmo still hadn't lost her mind. She and Lung Shan had teased Yang Kai together just to see him make a fool of himself. Now that his wolf nature had been aroused, Zmo really couldn't handle it. Wasn't he? How could he still be in such a good mood? Zmo gasped for breath. Quietly bending her knee, she aimed it at Yang Kai's crotch. A moment later, Zmo felt something as hard as iron and as hot as fire. Shocked, Zmo exclaimed, her body instantly stiffening, her pretty face immediately changing color. Heh. Yang Kai looked up at her and grinned, reaching out his hand and reaching under Zmo's skirt. Don't. Zmo panicked, quickly grabbing Yang Kai's arm. You think I'll stop just because you say no? Yang Kai sneered, but his movements didn't stop. Wherever his big hand went, it was warm, wet, and muddy. Zmo, who was struggling, instantly lost the strength to resist and softly lay down. Lung Shan also lost the ability to think. She didn't know how Zmo could act so realistically. Even if she wanted to see him make a fool of himself, she didn't need to sacrifice so much. This was already somewhat unacceptable. Lung Shan's face turned red, her heartbeat accelerated, her blood boiled, and her lower abdomen seemed to be filled with all kinds of emotions. Just as Zmo felt like she had tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it, she suddenly opened her eyes. She didn't know where the strength came from, but she quickly pushed away Kai Yang, who was caressing her. Her complexion greatly changed. You wait, my monster beast is dead, there may be enemies nearby. Chapter 245. Listening to her words, Yang Kai's lust was instantly extinguished, his brow furrowing as he asked, how many died? 6. Instantly killed, 1 5th order, 5 4th order. Zmo's face was filled with shock, her brow furrowed as she crawled out from under Yang Kai's body and hurriedly arranged her clothes to cover her upper body. Not knowing what she was thinking, her clear eyes quietly glanced towards Yang Kai's crotch before quickly turning away, her face as red as blood, flashing an alluring luster. Do you know who did this and how many people there are? Yang Kai asked in a deep voice. Zmo controlled the monster beast through her soul-controlling insect, so within a certain range she could sense whether the monster beast was dead or alive, but other information was difficult to grasp. After all, she had not seen it with her own eyes. I'm not sure. Zmo shook her head. Let's go take a look. Yang Kai made a prompt decision. It may be dangerous. Zmo hesitated. What if it's the master who escaped before? Naturally, she was referring to Wu Cheng. In this isolated world, being able to kill 6 monster beasts in an instant meant that the other party's strength was definitely very strong. If it's him, that would be the best. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a little eager. Wu Cheng-yi had sent his junior brother to kill him, something Yang Kai still held a grudge against him. Sooner or later he would settle this account, not to mention, Wu Cheng-yi most likely had a treasure like the brilliant flame liquid on him. Whether it was revenge or treasure, Yang Kai had no reason to let him go. Seeing Yang Kai so stubborn, Zmo couldn't just ignore his intentions. What's more, even if it really was Wu Cheng-yi, facing Zmo's monster beast army would not be easy. Hurriedly ordering, Zmo led the rest of the monster beast army towards the scene of the accident. Lung Shan also followed, the two women walking side by side, deliberately leaving Yang Kai behind. Yang Kai didn't pay them any mind and simply followed behind them while remaining vigilant of his surroundings. What's wrong? Lung Shan keenly noticed the change in ZMO and couldn't help asking. What? ZMO seemed to be in a daze just now. He didn't seem to have heard Lung Shan's words. You've become strange. Lung Shan looked at her curiously. Didn't you say you were going to seduce him and embarrass him? Why did you? Lung Shan thought for a long time before she came up with a suitable adjective. You seem to be enjoying yourself. ZMO couldn't wait to dig a hole and crawl into it. Her ears and neck were all red as she gritted her teeth and whispered, "Don't talk about this anymore. Don't try to seduce him again in the future, otherwise, you might end up playing with fire." Lung Shan was surprised. What a huge loss. Originally, she thought that Yang Kai wasn't a real man, so ZMO didn't take his frivolity to heart. So what if he kissed and touched her? You're not a real man. What more could he do? Even if I were to strip naked and lie in front of you, you would only be able to touch me. But what she never expected was that Yang Kai was not what she had imagined at all. The feeling of touch in that instant. Even now, it still lingered in ZMO's mind. Every time she thought about it, she couldn't help but feel ashamed. ZMO's heart was not as bold as she appeared on the surface. But, if he really was a real man, then why was he able to remain indifferent when she and Lung Shan almost stripped naked a few days ago? What kind of man would be able to resist the temptation at their fingertips? Could it be that he was really a gentleman? While her thoughts were running wild, ZMO soon arrived at the place where the 6 monster beast had died. There were some bloodstains on the ground, but the monster beast's body was no longer there. All that was left was a pile of powder. Yang Kai looked around and couldn't help but wrinkle his brow. ZMO squatted down and fiddled with the powder. A moment later her expression changed. What's wrong? Lung Shan asked. The soul-controlling insects are gone. ZMO's face was pale as she carefully searched another pile of powder. But even after searching through all 6 piles of powder, she still couldn't find a single soul-controlling insect. No need to search. The one who killed your monster beast was not that master from the 9-star sword school. Yang Kai looked at ZMO playfully. There are no traces of sword chi left behind here. What are you trying to say? ZMO looked uneasy, faintly guessing something, but she didn't dare to confirm it. Or rather, she didn't want to confirm it. You know it in your heart. Do you still need me to say more? Yang Kai sneered. It can't be. ZMO shook her head, her voice low, her heart shaking. Suddenly, ZMO raised her head and looked in another direction. A few more of my monster beast have died. Yang Kai sneered, becoming more and more convinced of his guess. Tilting his head, he looked at ZMO. Do you want to go and take a look? ZMO hesitated for a long time before finally nodding her head. But this time, she no longer dared to disperse her monster beast to the periphery, instead summoning all of them back and hurrying to the second place. Half an hour later, ZMO once again stood up in disappointment. There were 4 piles of powder here, so there should have been 4 soul-controlling insects, but at this moment, just like before, those insects had disappeared. Was it your 2 fellow disciples? Lung Shan finally reacted and looked at ZMO in amazement. The soul-controlling insects were unique to ZMO and her fellow disciples. If it was really Wu Cheng-yi who had killed the monster beast, it was impossible for him to take away the soul-controlling insects. He simply didn't have such great skill. Being able to kill 2 batches of ZMO's monster beast in such a short time, the one who did it was either very strong or had a large number of people. Combined with the clues of the disappearance of the soul-controlling insects, the identity of the one who had done it was obvious. As a fellow Sanluo Temple cultivator, ZMO's 2 fellow disciples definitely knew how to take away her soul-controlling insects and had the strength to kill so many monster beasts in an instant. Their subordinates controlled many of the great Han cultivators. However, ZMO couldn't believe this fact, nor did she want to believe it. They were all fellow disciples. How could they do such a thing to her? Taking a deep breath and closing her eyes, ZMO spread out her perception in an attempt to find the whereabouts of her soul-controlling insects, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find them. A moment later, Zmo opened her eyes, a cold light flashing across them as she coldly glanced around, sneering. "Let's get out of here first." Yang Kai frowned, not allowing her to explain, grabbing Zmo's arm and dragging her out. 2 hours later, the three of them were already 100 kilometers away. Of the several dozen monster beasts, 10 had died, 2 of which were 5th-order monster beasts, causing Zmo's strength to greatly decrease. After stopping to rest, Zmo sat down, her expression constantly changing, sometimes cold, sometimes confused, sometimes painful, sometimes cruel. Lung Shan and Yang Kai glanced at each other, both of them somewhat speechless, knowing that she was struggling internally at the moment. Yang Kai winked at Lung Shan, hinting for her to comfort her, but Lung Shan turned a blind eye and looked away. Yang Kai was speechless and could only remain silent. After a while, Zmo let out a painful groan. Breathing heavily, she looked at Yang Kai with some pity. "Why did they do this?" "You should ask them that," Yang Kai said lightly. "We're all fellow disciples, although there is competition between us. But why would they do this to me?" Zmo couldn't figure it out. "What's wrong with being fellow disciples?" Yang Kai disagreed. "Fellow disciples are the most terrible." "Will your fellow disciples kill each other?" Yang Kai and Lung Shan nodded. Zmo was surprised and frowned. Sighing, she said, "Maybe we all come from a small branch of Sanluo Temple and don't have many fellow disciples, so when we were in Tianlang Dynasty, we all looked out for each other, so even if there was competition, we didn't go too far." "This is not Tianlang Dynasty, nor is it your Sanluo Temple," Yang Kai said calmly. "It's because of this that we need to support each other." Zmo still couldn't accept it. "I thought you were a ruthless woman, but I didn't expect you to be so naive." Yang Kai sneered. Zmo's ruthlessness was probably only directed at the cultivator. Facing her fellow disciples, she still had some scruples and couldn't let loose. Zmo smiled bitterly, but just as she was about to speak, her expression suddenly became painful and she fell to the ground, clutching her head with both hands. She howled miserably. Yang Kai and Lung Shan's expressions changed and they hurried forward. Zmo seemed to be suffering a great deal of torture, her hands tightly gripping her hair, her body curled up like a shrimp, her whole body tense. Sweat poured out like water. This situation was exactly the same as when Yang Kai had tortured her before. This was the result of her soul being injured. Yang Kai and Lung Shan glanced at each other. Both of them saw a trace of horror in each other's eyes. Zmo's pain lasted for a long time before it gradually subsided. Her clothes were soaked with sweat and her body was weak, but her eyes had become cold and piercing. "It's them. They are warning me, summoning me. Let me go." Zmo grit her teeth, her face filled with murderous intent. Finished speaking, she grabbed Yang Kai's clothes and solemnly looked at him. "Help me kill them." Yang Kai grinned. "I've been thinking about this for a long time." A few days ago, when Yang Kai proposed it, Zmo had refused. She hadn't expected things to develop so dramatically. Zmo still had some principles and didn't want to harm her fellow disciples, but her 2 fellow disciples obviously weren't so kind. "Where are they?" Yang Kai asked. "That way." Zmo pointed in a direction. "It's about an hour away." "An hour? Let's think about it carefully." Yang Kai frowned, then put Zmo on his back and carried her on his back. Leaning against Yang Kai's back, Zmo felt a little strange. The 2 of them could only be considered enemies, but now they were in the same boat, working together to deal with her 2 fellow disciples. The change in roles between friend and foe made her feel like she was falling through the clouds. Along the way, Zmo briefly explained the situation between her 2 fellow disciples. The 2 of them came from the same family and were cousins, both of whom had reached the Yuan Qi boundary 4th order. One was called Yao He, the other was called Yao Shi. Each of them controlled around 50 monster beasts, adding up to a total of over 100 monster beasts. In terms of the number of monster beasts they controlled, they were more than twice the number of monster beasts Zmo controlled. Currently, Zmo only had 30 to 40 monster beasts under her control. It was absolutely impossible to fight them head-on, but as long as she could find a way to kill one of them, the monster beast controlled by the one she killed would be destroyed. At that time, chaos would definitely ensue, and only in that chaos would there be hope for victory. Because of her anger, Zmo told him all the information about her two fellow disciples. Yang Kai listened quietly, silently memorizing it all in his mind, constantly deducing how to win. Chapter 246. Hearing this, Yang Kai said with some worry, "Is your brother Qi Shui with them? If Qi Shui is with them, then we'll be in big trouble." Qi Shui was Yuan Qi's 7th-stage master, and he had also enslaved a 6th-order monster beast, making him very difficult to deal with. Zmo sighed, "I hope he isn't." An hour later, the three of them finally arrived at their destination. Zmo also slid down from Yang Kai's back, glancing towards him gratefully as she tidied up her clothes and messy hair, her pretty face turning cold as she walked over to their destination. In the distance, Yang Kai saw a large number of monster beasts and a dozen or so figures gathered together. As Zmo approached, two people stood up, Yao He and Yao Shi from Sun Luo Temple. This man and woman were smiling towards them, without the slightest trace of guilt on their faces. With a single order, the hundreds of monster beasts scattered and surrounded Zmo's monster beast army. Senior sister has finally arrived. Yao He's expression was frivolous, not putting Zmo in his eyes at all as he chuckled and greeted her. Yao Shi also giggled and looked at Zmo disdainfully. "Didn't you ask me to come here?" Zmo looked at them coldly, standing about 10 feet away from them. The three disciples from Sun Luo Temple stood facing each other, and the smell of gunpowder filled the air. Yang Kai stood behind Zmo and swept his eyes around, seeing many familiar faces. A few dozen meters away, the 4 girls from 10,000 Flower Palace sat cross-legged on the ground, looking defeated. Yi Qingxi and Zhou Ba of Azura sect, Chen Shueshu and Su Xiaoyu of Reflecting Moon sect were also gathered together. In addition, the disciples of Gemini Island, Water Moon Hall, Pure Heart Palace, Soaring Feather Pavilion, and many other sects were also present. After seeing Yang Kai, Chen Shueshu and Su Xiaoyu both smiled wryly at him, both of them feeling the same kind of sadness that came from falling into the same predicament. Yang Kai nodded slightly, greeting them. There were still 16 or 17 people left in their group, but their numbers should have been more than that. It was likely that many of them had died recently. "You too, scram to the side." Yao He glanced at Yang Kai and Leng Shan and ordered. Zmo nodded slightly. Yang Kai and Leng Shan then walked over to Chen Shueshu and the others. When the two sides met, one of the girls from 10,000 Flower Palace looked at Yang Kai and sighed, "You also couldn't escape." Yang Kai smiled. "Young lady, may I ask you for your name?" The last time they had met, when Wu Chengyi had tried to embarrass him, this young woman from the 10,000 Flower Palace had helped him out, so Yang Kai had a good impression of her. The 4 sisters, Chunlan and Qiu. Their appearances were outstanding, and they each had their own merits. They sat together. It was also a beautiful scenery. The other girl, who looked more playful, immediately pouted. "You're already a prisoner. How can you still be in the mood to inquire about a girl's name?" Yang Kai raised his brow at her and said, "Haven't you heard of a man's true colors? I haven't asked you for your name yet." The girl pursed her lips and said, "Yi Han." Yi Qingxi pursed her lips and smiled, "You have the same surname as me. If I can return alive, I must marry little sister Han." Han Shaoqi smiled and introduced her other 2 junior sisters. One of them was called Hua Ruoyin while the other was called Lu Qingru. They were all people who had fallen from grace, but with Yang Kai as a new face, the others also introduced themselves. Water Moon Hall's Feng Qianhen, Pure Heart Palace's Wufang and Li Xan Yuan, Soaring Feather Pavilion's Chu Jing Shan. With the elite disciples of each sect gathered together, the scene was joyous and harmonious. The worries of the past few days had been washed away by this atmosphere. Death is near, yet you still have the mood to exchange pleasantries. It's not too late to talk about this if you can survive. A voice suddenly interrupted everyone's laughter. Turning his head to look, Kai Yang saw a man looking at him with a contemptuous smile. His eyes flashing, Yang Kai didn't care. Yi Qingxi sneered and said, "By Xiu Ming. Since we were captured, you've been pouring cold water on us every other day. What do you mean by that?" Bai Xiuming sneered, "Nothing. It's just a piece of trash. Is it worth it for you to be so happy? Don't tell me you still expect him to save us?" Chen Shuishu frowned and said, "If you think you have no hope of surviving, just end it yourself. Why bother with other people's interests? Don't slander Brother Yang. Brother Yang's cultivation is just a bit low." Bai Xiuming didn't say anything. The other person next to him chuckled, "A low cultivation is a piece of trash. Father really doesn't know how a piece of trash like him managed to survive until now. He should have died long ago. Why bother dragging out his last breath?" This person should be from the same sect as Bai Xiuming. The two of them were brother, so naturally they would stand on the same side. Han Shaoqi coldly said, "You talk too much." Yi Han, Hua Ruyin, and Lu Qingru also glared at him angrily. Although Bai Xiuming and the people around him looked down on Yang Kai, they didn't want to provoke public anger, so they just coldly snorted and no longer said anything. Because of the disturbance caused by these two, the original atmosphere was suddenly ruined, and everyone's hearts became heavy. Yi Han puffed up her cheeks and comforted, "Yang Kai, right? Don't mind them. These two are always so pessimistic and can't bear to see others in a good mood." Yang Kai shook his head, "I don't care, just treat them like dogs barking." To the side, Han Shaoqi was stunned for a moment before smiling. "What did you say?" Bai Xiuming and the person next to him opened their eyes at the same time and stared at Yang Kai with murderous intent. "If you're not deaf, you should be able to hear me clearly." Yang Kai looked at him calmly. "You court death." Bai Xiuming angrily shouted as he stood up. "You all want to die, don't you?" Yao He angrily shouted, "If you want to die, I'll help you right now." Bai Xiuming glanced at Yao He with a look of dread before unwillingly sitting down and angrily glaring at Yang Kai. "You just wait, sooner or later I'll make you pay." "Good, I'll be waiting." Yang Kai nodded lightly. The atmosphere in the Great Han Cultivator was quite tense, but the atmosphere between the Tian Lang trio was also quite delicate. Since ZMO returned, Yao He and Yao Shi only looked at her with a smile, not saying a word. After a long time, ZMO let out a sigh of relief and coldly asked, "Why are you doing this?" Yao He chuckled, "Why? Can't senior sister Z understand? Just because in the sect, Master takes care of me more?" ZMO smiled contemptuously. Yao He and Yao Shi's expressions both changed slightly, their expressions becoming cold. ZMO continued, "You entered the sect earlier than I did, but your strength didn't grow as fast as mine, so in the end, you were all unwilling. You could only call me senior sister. Is this your reason and excuse? Do you really think your aptitude is outstanding?" Yao Shi sneered, "If Master hadn't given you more resources, how could you have caught up? In terms of aptitude alone, which part of us can't compare to you? You've never been better than me." ZMO refused to back down, tit for tat. Yao He's face showed a look of disdain. "Is that so? Then dare I ask, senior sister, did you ever expect this situation? I really didn't expect you to be so vicious, even daring to act against me." ZMO's face was filled with hatred. Yao He sneered, "Forget it, I won't argue with you anymore. After all, you are senior sister. We called you here. We didn't mean anything else. We just couldn't leave this damned place for the time being, and there were no enemies here. So we thought, senior sister, you don't have any use for those monster beasts, right?" ZMO's pretty face became cold. "You want my monster beast?" Yao He nodded. "She, and I are just a little bit away from breaking through. However, we are somewhat reluctant to slaughter our own monster beast, so we can only hope that senior sister can contribute a bit." ZMO was filled with grief. "Just because of this, you didn't hesitate to destroy a wisp of my soul?" Yao Shi smiled. "Who told senior sister to hide? If you hadn't hidden, we wouldn't have done this. Now, there isn't much fun in staying here. We originally wanted to have a hunting competition with senior sister's monster beast, but we didn't expect that the heavens wouldn't let us. You forced us to do this. Good. Zimo's expression was bitter, but her eyes still showed a trace of determination. You want my monster beast? I'll give them all to you. Yao He laughed. I knew senior sister was easy to talk to, so I asked senior sister to order them not to resist, otherwise if they really start fighting I'm afraid it won't end well. Zmo closed her eyes, her chest heaving up and down. Although after arriving here, she had already taken back the soul-controlling insect and Yao Shi's soul threads, so she no longer had to worry about Yao He and Yao Shi destroying them. However, the other party still had an overwhelming advantage. Not to mention the numerous monster beasts in their hands, the dozen or so cultivators who were controlled by them were also quite a powerful fighting force. If they really fought, Zmo had no chance of winning. Even if she didn't have much hope of breaking through, so even if she was unwilling, she had no choice. Zmo could only compromise for the time being. Staring at Zmo's towering peaks, Yao He's eyes flashed a trace of lust, involuntarily licking his lips. Good. Zmo opened her eyes and said expressionlessly. Yao He and Yao Shi glanced at each other and issued orders in their hearts. In an instant, the miserable howls of countless demonic beasts rang out. Blood splattered everywhere as the demonic beasts that didn't resist fell to the ground one after another. Their necks were bitten off by their own kind, and they died on the spot. The large man's group of cultivators' faces were filled with horror as they watched this scene unfold. In less than a dozen breaths of time, 30 to 40 monster beasts had been killed. Haha. Yao He laughed loudly. With 30 to 40 blood beads, either he or Yao Shi could break through their current realm and break through to the Yuan Qi 5th stage. As for the rest, as long as they interrogated the large man's group of cultivators' secrets, they would be able to slaughter them all. At that time, they would be able to obtain a large number of blood beads. What particularly tempted Yao He were the several beautiful women in the large man's group. Each of them was extraordinarily beautiful and had enchanting figures. These days, he had tried every means possible to get close to them, but Yao Shi had been watching him too closely, never leaving his side, making it impossible for him to find an opportunity. Although the two of them were cousins, their relationship was far more than that. He had to find a way to distract his cousin so he could do whatever he wanted. Yao He glanced over at Han Shaoqi and the others and couldn't help but gulp. I'll let her use these blood beads for the time being. Once she refines and absorbs them, breaking through to the Yuan Qi 5th stage will take some time. That time is enough for me to act presumptuously. The more Yao He thought about it, the more excited he became. He couldn't wait to immediately embrace the large man's group of beauties and play with them as he pleased, tasting the taste of their flesh. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.